Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Crew 2. I'm Bobbin Threadbare.
And I'm Joe.
And we are at the street racing headquarters.
Okay, now I can see it.
It's on the top floor of a parking garage. And that's Latrell, by the way.
Hi, Latrell.
He just sort of hangs out here. So from here, you can buy cars in all four of the disciplines for street racing, which are street races, drag races, drift races, and hypercar. You can also buy special bundles. You can get the Crew 2 Season Pass, which I already have. It gets me access to extra stuff. And by buying this bundle, I can get 2 motorcycles, because one of those I already own.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure if the price accounts for that fact.
I have a question about the drag cars.
Oh?
Do they actually have those comedy cars? The weird arrow-shaped ones?
No, they are modified production cars. Also, this is my standing in the world. You can see that by this point, some people with nothing better to do have maxed out the number of followers they can possibly get and are icon level 999. Right, presumably at that point they're ranked by whoever got there first.
Oh.
And up here, we can see Tio.
Hi, Tio.
I believe that's the man on the left there. And also, PvP. I'll be taking a look at that later. But not in this video. And this is the car that we could win by beating Tio.
It's awfully generous of him to let him in there.
I forget what it's called, but it is very expensive.
Either the F1 or the MP4-12C.
Anyway, that's enough looking around. So let's get on to the next event. Drag racing. Now once again, it appears there's a new drag race that I've never done before. So let's start with that.
Oh man.
And of course, I believe in buying the best tool for the best job. So while my street racing car was a Porsche, my drag racer is a Ford Mustang.
That thing is gross. It's...
2, 1.
So here's the way that drag races work. You've got 3 heats, 3 runs. And step 1 is to warm up your tires. Step 2 is to shift. Once you hit that little green dot there, and then you burn some nitrous, and you get as fast as you possibly can. Some steering may be required, but really not that much.
I'm just happy that it bounces a lot.
Oh yeah, lots of wheelies. That's why you've got that rig in the back.
Oh, is that what it's for? Wow.
Yes, so that the car does not tip itself over under its own speed.
Huh. I'm learning so much today.
And I find that starting from neutral is better than starting with revving your engine once you get started on one of these drag races. Also, while you can burn any amount of nitrous for a normal race, in a drag race, nitrous works a little bit more like how it does in real life, where you can only just hit it once and then it's gone. And for that, I find that burning nitrous works best once you've hit around like 3rd gear or so. The car has not finished accelerating, but you have you're going much faster than the first couple of gears. And yes, for each event you get 3 runs, and then it chooses your best run to test against the objective time. In this case, I beat it by around 0.4 seconds. And you may have noticed, by the way, that my drag racer is not maxed out for its parts. That's because drag races are so simple, I really haven't invested much time into them.
I guess that's fair. It definitely seems like a, I don't know, once a sesh thing.
Yeah, pretty simplistic. But I might as well show a few more of these off. We won't be going back to them after this, though. Not much else to see. Also, drag racers are hilarious to drive on the open map.
Yeah, how's the turning circle on this thing?
Once you get moving in a certain direction, it really doesn't move in any other directions.
1.
Fair.
And by the way, I am currently have a custom paint job on this vehicle.
Really?
Believe it or not, it does not automatically come with the police badge on the sides there.
Oh.
But I'll be explaining what the hell's up with that in a later video. But suffice it to say for now that the custom paint job function in this game is very comprehensive. So, were you going to say something else earlier?
Well, it doesn't actually look like you're gonna make it.
Make the speed?
That ghost there seems to have you beat.
Perhaps. But then, why would I include one of these events if I was going to lose it?
Well, there's the classic LP joke.
Record everything?
Oh, this is definitely just a showcase of what happens when you lose.
Well, I can explain the reason why the ghost keeps beating me, but I'm going to let this event finish before explaining myself.
Oh.
But yes, there is clearly no way I'm going to beat that ghost. It just flashed right on ahead of me. And in total, my best run time was 16.93 seconds, which easily beat the 20 seconds I needed to beat. I've won this event. That's because when you're racing against a ghost, there are several events that do this. The ghost is the world record after you beat the event once.
Oh.
I guess it's a good motivator.
Oh, I definitely feel motivated by something speeding past me with no hope of my ever catching up, yeah.
But hey, I still get all the points and bitcoins and whatnot. Can't complain too much.
Yeah.
That's my best turn radius right there. I mean, look at those back tires.
1.
Look how fat those things are.
I think you could I wonder if they're wider than some people.
It could be. But yeah, I do like how the vehicles are very clearly customized for the kind of race that you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at those side pipes. Wait, those aren't pipes, they're wings?
Yeah,
Double wings for double the downforce?
and also, not just 4, but there are 2 more on the side. Exhaust ports.
Okay. This is... The thing is, I know drag racing is even more weird and just over the top than this, so I can't even be mad, but
Oh yeah, this is going to be a good run. At least for my perf level.
I mean, you got the funk going and everything.
Mm-hmm. I believe this is from Enter the Dragon.
Ooh. I appreciate it.
Alright. Last run. Let's see what I can do. Beat my old record. And by the way, for drag racers, the perf level goes up to 400. As opposed to street racers, which go up to 260.
Of course.
And they're both based around stock cars, too. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah.
Ah,
Whoa.
yeah. Almost 0.1 of a second.
You squeaked that one out. It was close.
Yeah, that's literally squeaking.
Victory and be proud.
Yeah, and I got a new icon point.
Great.
And that's the Santa Monica Pier up there.
Yeah.
Alright, let's see. What to do next? Oh yeah, by the way, you can actually mess around with the custom settings, and if you do that enough, you can make a drag racer able to make turns.
Why would you want to do that?
for driving it around for shits and giggles, but yeah, if you went back into a drag race event, you would be best served by switching it back. Whoops.
I can't even... Like, usually when I navigate these tuning menus, I just wait for a tooltip to pop up and say, this is what happens when it goes up and when it goes down.
Yeah, no such luck in this game. Although, it will tell you, like, if you're changing the numbers, like, if you're changing the top speed or the acceleration, it'll tell you if you've done that. But in terms of, you know, being able to take corners, it's really up to trial and error.
Or having a mechanic friend.
Yeah, or watching YouTube videos where they explain what the hell's going on.
I love the type of game that requires extensive YouTube watching.
Yeah. Well, like I said, if you don't want to mess with those things, you can still easily win every event for every game.
Oh, they actually spin, huh?
Mm-hmm. Of course, there's enough of a turn in this particular race that it's not recommended that you avoid looking forward.
Which is... like, I gotta wonder if they actually just did that to make it more video gamey.
Well, it is definitely on the arcade side of the arcade versus simulator experience.
Which I appreciate.
Ooh, perfect start. Perfect gear shifts.
There you go.
Good nitrous use. And a top speed of 316 miles an hour.
This is obscene.
Oh, 317. And yet that wasn't my best runtime.
Yeah?
Oh well. Still won. Although I do have to wonder how perfect you have to be to beat a drag race on Ace difficulty. Obviously you need the best parts, but you do also need to perform well in order to win at that difficulty. In any event, I think I've done enough drift racing, so instead I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try one of the unique street races.
Oh man.
The one sponsored by Harley-Davidson.
Did they actually send a person from Harley-Davidson to design this?
At Ace difficulty. Why not?
Oh no.
So once I enter the event, I am automatically switched to the vehicle I will need in order to race it. In this case, a Harley-Davidson. Now, if you don't have this particular bike, the game will loan one out to you. However, you don't get to customize it and boost its numbers.
2,
So if you want to beat this race on difficult or ace, you need to buy this bike and put custom parts in it.
I appreciate you sticking in the bike lane. Very polite.
Yeah, I don't think this is supposed to be for motorized bikes, though.
Nonsense. It's got 2 wheels. It's a bicycle.
Mm-hmm. And they just went bye-bye. So allow me to explain a little something about my history with this race. I tried to beat the second difficulty level with a loaner, which, like I said, does not improve its numbers at all. So all of the other vehicles, all of those other bikes, were much better than mine. But I was stubborn and angry and didn't quite understand the whole buy it and customize it bit that I just explained to you. And so I beat my head against this race for hours. Whoops. And it does take hours, by the way, because note that I am 15% done with this race and we are 1.5 minutes into it. When the Crew 2 wants you to go on a long race, that race is long.
It's... yeah?
So in this particular case, I believe we are going from Las Vegas to the Pacific coast, across the Sierra Nevadas.
That is definitely where you would take a Harley-Davidson.
And hey, look, it's the Salt Flats.
Oh, great.
Yeah, funny thing about the Salt Flats is that you don't really have to stay on the road. Since the Salt Flats are used for
Oh.
testing vehicle speeds, you can actually go at pretty much full speed off the road in this area. So I'm not going to bother turning for this. I'm just going to, take a little more of a lazy curve here. Save some time that way.
Look at it go.
And so, like I said, I beat my head against this race for hours, so I know all the tricks.
I'll take your word for it.
Oh, there's this one shortcut that's coming up that's actually pretty good.
No, man.
It shows off what I said earlier about the fact that you only need to hit the checkpoints. You do not need to stick to any sort of path. There is no out of bounds in this game.
Okay.
Unless you, like, fall into the water or something. But then it just resets you to the nearest road. Whoops.
I'm ready for the shortcut anytime.
Well, it's still coming up, but you can see we're progressing into the foothills here. That's not the big shortcut, but it is a shortcut. Anyway, something else to note is that motorcycles are also street race vehicles, but unlike cars, they don't decelerate nearly as much as a car does when they go off-road. They're also pretty easy to maneuver because the vehicle is a lot smaller. And, so it can fit around tighter corners. And the game does account for that. Oh, here we go.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, what's that? Switchbacks? Fuck that.
I mean... Yep, you're just skyrimming it up there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Up and over. That's the way to do it.
I appreciate it.
I'm still going like 70s. And here we are. Oh, almost missed the turn.
There you are.
But yeah, the game doesn't always let you do that because they do have these walls here on the sides.
Mm-hmm.
And they are invulnerable in most cases. Like, you get a few fences here and there, but concrete barriers like this, you just cannot go through them. I mean, you can go over them, but you kind of have to be in a plane. Whoop. Oh, nice turn. Just enough braking to not hit anything. Because that's the other thing you need to worry about when you've got the concrete walls here. If you hit them, you speed down quite a bit. Like, apparently this didn't used to be true about the game. Like, there were at least some cars that you could essentially wall ride.
Huh.
You could hit the concrete barriers and not really speed down at all. But they patched that out. Aw, shit.
Oh, dang.
Oh no. I've lost so much time, now I'm only going to be... Wait for it. Wait for it.
I'm gonna guess you lost about... Oh.
26 seconds ahead. Oh damn.
Now I gotta wonder what sort of lead you had beforehand, because I was gonna guess that you lost about 10 seconds or so.
Well, it's only updating that when the person in second place crosses a checkpoint.
Oh.
So, you may see the change coming up in about... Oh, there it is.
Oh.
So I only lost about 6 seconds then.
Oh, dang. This...
And let me remind you, I am on Ace difficulty. The other vehicles, the other drivers are as good as this game allows them to be. But honestly, they're kind of optimized for street races, so for long-distance endurance races like this one, 69, very nice.
Nice.
You, They kind of lose track of what they were doing, and they make too many mistakes compared to the race length. I mean, not that I'm really complaining here.
I'm gonna say there is one thing you could definitely do to increase the difficulty level.
Reduce your performance level?
No. Use the same vehicles. Take assists off. So, ESP, ABS. You could, I kind of want to see how you could do with, just no computer telling you not to spin out.
Yeah. Well, that is kind of what happened earlier with a Bullet Mustang. So apparently I would place third in the easiest difficulty level in that case.
Oh no.
But then it does have like other disadvantages, like 4 gears and being an ancient car in a modern racing competition.
Yeah, some of those go up to 7. Or 8.
What, the gearboxes?
Yeah.
Not the 1968 Ford Mustang. Some of these modern vehicles do have like a ton of gears though. Like they're making some that have up to 10.
At that point, you might as well just have CVT, right?
Yeah, well, CVTs have their own disadvantages.
I guess.
Like, something I keep hearing about them is the droning noise,
Oh, yeah.
as the CVT constantly keeps the engine in the perfect rev level.
Pretty sure, like, any car show will, like, put forward that exact same say against them, and they always do, like, they always do the sound with their mouths.
Yeah.
It's almost a cliche at this point.
Although they do make CVTs these days with simulated gears,
Oh,
so it doesn't quite annoy your ears as much, while still maintaining most of the efficiency of a CVT. And some of them even come with manual shifters, which is kind of weird. By the way, welcome to Yosemite National Park.
It's big. Wow, this game does a very good job of having things be big, locales being huge. I appreciate it.
Yeah. It's pretty, too.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen stuff from the first game. I haven't played The Crew 1, but I've seen videos of the first game, and this is a lot more pretty. Like, it doesn't have a gray filter on everything, for one. And oh yeah, you can see here the benefit of going on a long run.
They make the time feel worth it, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're just going for parts.
But yes, you get 1 part per thing, and also a hell of a lot more bitcoins and followers.
Oh boy.
And of course, I'm not putting this on my Harley Davidson. I'm putting this on the car I want to drive. And right now I'm trying to get a set of the nitrous legendaries. That's the one with the little chemistry flask.
Oh man.
It's gonna take me a while to get them all, though. Even if I keep doing this race at ace level, which is apparently easy as hell to do. Alright. Yep. Yeah, doing a wheelie on a Harley. Not that easy.
Not gonna call it impossible, just
Difficult.
very impractical.
Today, I start in on the request list. And to kick things off, patron Shiny has made a very particular request for the movie Death Race 2000. It's a crazy dystopian movie made in 1975, and although it defines the words movie schlock, it's built up a cult following that carries on to this day. The story about the story. You know, I don't think I've ever covered a Roger Corman film before. So hey, Roger Corman! Corman is one of the biggest names of all time for bad movies. Ed Wood might have the hits, but Corman has the library. He's made dozens of films as director or producer, and while the first one came out in 1955, he is still producing new movies to this day. None of his works have been box office smashes exactly, and he will proudly talk about keeping his films under budget. But despite that, his movies always seem to have a heart to them that keep them from being soulless cash-ins. You see, Corman was one of the driving forces behind the New Hollywood movement. As the Hollywood production code died in the late 60s, so did the old paradigm of big studios churning out movie after movie to run in their studio-owned theaters. A few movies each year would get a decent budget, but for the most part, these films were made to fill time and get people to keep coming to their theaters. However, with the production code dead, studios were being less intrusive about censorship, giving directors and actors more control over their work. And since studios no longer owned any theaters, they had to get competitive with each other and produce fewer movies of higher quality. They also had to compete with independent filmmakers and foreign films whom they could no longer keep out of theaters. Some defining features of New Hollywood were anti-heroes who do things the production code would have banned, artistic cinematography that borrows from foreign art film techniques, provocative stories and imagery that try and get a reaction out of the audience, and dark endings that don't tie up the story nice and neat. Roger Corman was a big part of this movement because a lot of actors and directors from this period got their start under him. They include James Cameron, Ron Howard, Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, Sylvester Stallone, Dennis Hopper, Peter Fonda, and Jack Nicholson. Corman influenced all of these people while staying, for the most part, an independent filmmaker with shoestring budgets who always made a profit. Today's film started off as a short story written by Danish immigrant Ib Melchior. Melchior was an author and director of pulp science fiction who worked with Corman more than once, and in this case, Corman bought a story of his named The Racer. Corman wanted a movie about a violent science fiction sport to cash in on the hype around the United Artists movie Rollerball, and he got Paul Bartel to direct it. He brought in David Carradine as the lead actor, and Sylvester Stallone would play a major antagonist. Incidentally, Death Race 2000 was the last significant role Stallone played before making the movie Rocky in 1976. Like every Corman movie, Death Race 2000 made a profit. Depending on the source, the movie's budget was between $300,000 and $500,000, and its box office returns were between $5 and $8 million. Critical reaction was mixed at best at the time, but today it ranks as one of the best cult movies Corman ever made. It's a little bit of satire mixed with a lot of violence and exploitation, but I suppose I should illustrate this by describing the story. We start with a high school band playing the Star-Spangled Banner, but the flag looks wrong. There are Nazis proudly sitting in the stands, and in front of them is a priest, the deacon of the bipartisan party. It's the opening of the 20th annual Transcontinental Road Race, a sporting event in which 5 mixed-gender drivers and navigators will go from one end of the United States to the other as fast as they can. We also meet Junior Bruce, the event's announcer, and Grace Pander, the interviewer. The 5 drivers each have rather obnoxious gimmicks. First is Calamity Jane Kelly and Pete, a cowgirl and cowboy in a bull car that looks kind of like the Mach 5. Next is Matilda the Hun and Herman the German Bach, Wisconsin neo-Nazis in a camo car with a swastika on the side. Third is Ray Nero the Hero Lonigan with Cleopatra, and their gimmick is Roman gladiator gear and a lion car. Fourth is Machine Gun Joe Viterbo and Myra, who come from Chicago, have a gangster theme, and have Tommy guns and a giant knife bolted to the front of their car. Last is our protagonist, Frankenstein, who has been in every race and is the only man to have won twice. Frankenstein is supposedly made of stitched-together body parts, but he dresses in all black and only lurches when the cameras are on. His new navigator is Annie Smith, who seems very qualified, but Frankenstein only cares about results. Before the race begins, the President of the United States addresses the audience from his estate in Russia. He's been the president since the world crash of 1979, and the address makes it clear that he's a dictator who oppresses the masses and uses the death race to keep them placated. The race begins, and after driving through an empty Manhattan, the 5 cars split up onto the different highway routes they plan on taking. Meanwhile, we see a group of resistance fighters squatting in an empty factory and watching the race. They mention that Annie Smith is one of them, and her goal is to capture Frankenstein to send a message to the president. However, Frankenstein is not what he appears to be. After talking about all the facial damage he supposedly took, Annie takes off his mask and he looks like David Carradine. Machine Gun Joe gets the first bonus points of the race when he runs over a construction worker. According to the rules, women, the elderly, and children are all worth extra points, and while winning a race segment gets you a lot of points, you could potentially win if you run over a bunch of people and place second. We then see Calamity Jane kill some smartass trying to be a matador, and then a hospital sets out a dozen old people for Frankenstein to run over. Instead, he runs over half a dozen of the nurses who put them out there. The Resistance turns out to have a lot of sabotage planned. When Nero the hero aims for a family picnic for some easy points, the baby turns out to be a bomb. The showrunners scramble to fill airtime while they figure out what's going on, but then the Resistance takes over the airwaves and claims responsibility for the bombing. The surviving racers reach St. Louis, the location of the first 12-hour pit stop. Now, this is a 70s exploitation movie, so everyone is getting massages in the nude, except for Frankenstein, who of course never appears outside of his black outfit. He sabotages Joe by making him jealous over Myra, and then he gets a visit from a member of his local fan club. She doesn't want his autograph or to have sex with him. She wants him to run her over so he can score some extra points. He mentions none of this to Annie when they do a little dance and make a little love in their private room. When the second stage begins, Frankenstein drops his glove on the pavement as an excuse to go around and grab it, and run over the deacon of the bipartisan party in the process. Later on, Annie makes her move by telling Frankenstein to go raid a political prison where the Resistance has been preparing a roadblock and ambush, complete with a fake Frankenstein to take the real one's place. However, Frankenstein plows through and drives away. There's really only one person who could have arranged the ambush, so Frankenstein has Annie switch places and drive for a while. Meanwhile, Matilda runs over Calamity Jane's navigator when he's working on the car, so Jane starts chasing her. Matilda stays ahead, but then she falls for a resistance trap straight out of Looney Tunes. But I guess it makes sense for the Nazi to go out like a cartoon villain. Back with Frankenstein, Annie swerves to avoid a kid in the road, and Frank has her stop the car and stand in front of it. After that, she admits that she's part of the Resistance, and that their master plan was to kidnap Frankenstein and hold him hostage until the president abolishes the race. Frankenstein simply laughs at this. The second pit stop is at Albuquerque, New Mexico. Government agents question Frankenstein about his run-in with the Resistance, and he covers for Annie by saying that the detour was his idea. Meanwhile, Annie has gone to the garage where Joe spots her. Joe is mad at Annie because she gave him bad advice that lost him the second stage, but before he could choke her to death, Frankenstein appears and beats him up. Afterwards, Frankenstein admits to Annie in private that he isn't the original racer. He's part of a government training program that raises kids to be Frankenstein, the best driver in the world. And when one of them suffers a serious injury, they replace him. It's not really clear why, though, since there's no shortage of other people willing to run this race. But this does show that the Resistance's plan was screwed from the word go. Still, this Frankenstein insists that he will be the last of his kind. The third stage begins, and Joe starts things off by killing his own pit crew for 40 points. Out in the desert, some Resistance members attack Calamity Jane and lure her into tripping a landmine. As for Frankenstein, he drugs Annie just in time for the Resistance to confront him in an airplane. The Resistance man thinks Annie is dead, and he says so to her grandmother before trying to bomb the car. However, he fails, and runs into the side of a mountain. When Annie wakes up afterwards, she tries to get Frankenstein to run off a cliff. She fails, so she confronts him about why he desperately wants to win the race when he so obviously hates it. So, he finally explains himself. The winner of the race gets to shake hands with the president, and Frankenstein has a grenade embedded in his hand. It's his life's goal to blow up the president, but he'll need to beat Machine Gun Joe to the finish line first. The two drivers get into a fierce battle on the highway, so Annie pulls off Frankenstein's grenade hand and blows Joe up with it. Frankenstein wins by default, so he pulls up to the finish line in New Los Angeles and heads up to the stage to shake hands with the president, concealing a knife under his glove. However, Annie's grandmother shoots Frankenstein since last she heard he had killed her granddaughter. But it turns out this Frankenstein was Annie in disguise, and then the real Frankenstein guns his car and aims for the podium. Sure enough, this kills the president, and the crowd cheers. Afterwards, Frankenstein marries Annie and becomes the new president, because that's obviously how this should work. His first acts are to retire the secret police, restore democracy and minority privilege, and welcome former rebels into the government, because it's just that easy. And when Junior Bruce objects to Frankenstein ending the death race, Frankenstein runs him over. You know something, folks? I don't think Death Race 2000 was trying to be very realistic. The cars. As promised, today's car segment is going to be all about the basics. My goal here is to teach you enough about cars to be able to follow along for the rest of the video series. If you already know the basics, then, well, I guess you can shut off the video now. But if you're still here, then let's get going. First of all, cars come in several size classes: full-size, mid-size, compact, and subcompact. You can get even smaller than subcompact with something called a K car, spelled K-E-I, but you don't usually see those outside of Japan. Another term for the sub-subcompact is the city car, or A segment, which are classes used in Europe. The original Mini and the Fiat 500 are in the A segment. Next is the body style. The basic car-shaped car is what's called a sedan. It has 4 doors for 2 rows of seats, and it has a trunk which opens up below the rear window. Next is the coupe, pronounced coupe in Britain, which only has 2 doors and either a smaller back row or just 1 row of seats. The coupe gets its name from the French word to cut, because someone has cut a sedan down and shortened it. A hatchback car can have 2 or 4 doors, but the main thing is that it has a hatch in the back instead of a trunk. Some people count this as an extra door, so another name for a hatchback is a 3-door or a 5-door car. A hatch includes the rear window instead of sitting below it like a trunk, so you get a bigger cargo area. A station wagon is a type of hatchback, but it's extra long in the back to give you even more cargo space. That extra space is why wagons were popular family trip vehicles for a long time, but in America they went out of fashion in the 90s. Then there's the convertible, also called a cabriolet. These cars have a removable top, and they'll either be a soft top with a fabric roof or a hard top with a metal roof. These tops usually retract into a special storage space in the back, which also means they have less storage space for cargo. There are a few more car styles, like the fastback and the roadster, but to be honest, a lot of it is marketers trying to blow smoke up your ass. Just remember that sedans have 4 doors while coupes have 2, and you can figure the rest out from there. Of course, there are also some other vehicles out there that aren't technically cars. Well, they still could be cars, depending on your definition. What I'm talking about is bigger vehicles, like trucks and vans. A truck is an engine designed for hauling big loads attached to a small passenger cabin with something else in the back. If it's a pickup truck, then the thing in the back is a big open bed where you can put stuff. But then you also have dump trucks, fire trucks, garbage trucks, tow trucks, giant semi-trailer trucks, and so on. Vans are also bigger than regular cars, but instead of an open-air bed, they have a big internal cargo area that's usually connected to the passenger area. In a van, the driver can turn around to see the cargo area. In a truck, the driver has to get out to check the back. Then there are minivans, which are smaller and designed more for families than for businesses. You'll also hear them called multi-purpose vehicles or people carriers in Britain, which is honestly a rather limiting description, since a minivan could also carry a lot of stuff. Then there's a sport utility vehicle, which is this whole thing. Jeep coined the term sport utility vehicle in 1974 to describe the new Jeep Cherokee. It was a two-door station wagon that combined a sporty performance with off-road utility, hence sport utility. Then, in the 1990s, American automakers started designing big vehicles with 3 rows of seats based on truck bodies, and they could carry a lot of cargo and go off-road. They didn't appear out of nowhere, but the late 90s is when they really took off. After that, manufacturers started making smaller and smaller versions, so now you have full-size, mid-size, compact, and subcompact SUVs, and each one of them is bigger than the same class of a car. When they get small enough, they're also called crossovers because they've crossed over to car bodies instead of truck bodies. And that distinction becomes kind of silly when you realize that SUVs started out car-sized and then got bigger. Anyway, a modern SUV is basically an oversized 5-door hatchback with available all-wheel drive. That's about it. And that leads me to the next set of definitions. You probably know what an engine is, but you might not know about the cylinder count. Each cylinder in an engine adds extra power, but they also use extra fuel and add extra weight. A small engine for a compact car will usually have 4 cylinders all in one row, and they call this an I4. The cylinders are all lined up like the letter I, and there's 4 of them. I4. A bigger engine for a mid-size car might have 2 extra cylinders, and this is called a V6. With so many cylinders firing all at once, the manufacturer angles them together for extra stability, and this angle looks like the letter V, V6. You also see V8 engines in muscle cars and trucks, but only really expensive sport cars and big commercial trucks will get V10 or V12 engines. It's always an even number, by the way, to keep the engine balanced. Different car engines use different kinds of fuel. The traditional car engine takes gasoline, which in Britain is called petrol. But the British are just being vague. Gasoline is a type of petroleum product. Then there are diesel engines, which are very good at moving a lot of weight around. They're also not that bad at moving small cars around, but after a bad launch in 1979, diesel cars never really took off in the United States. Modern cars can also use other fuel sources. A flex fuel car can take E85 fuel, a mix of 15% gasoline and 85% ethanol. Ethanol comes from corn and other renewable sources, so it won't run out one day, the way the gasoline will. Some more exotic engines can run on compressed natural gas, biodiesel, or hydrogen fuel cells. However, the most common alternative today is the hybrid car, which combines a regular gas engine with an electric motor that runs on an oversized battery. Having 2 motors under the hood adds a lot of weight, but these days the fuel savings are incredible. The plug-in hybrid variation lets you power the battery from a wall outlet and make short trips without using any fuel. And pure electric vehicles don't have a gas engine at all. Electric vehicles are quiet and can be very speedy, but they're not that common for the moment because they also have a limited range and they take ages to recharge compared to filling a gas tank. Then there's the drive wheels. Most cars send drive power to either the front wheels or the rear wheels, and the other 2 wheels are just along for the ride. Front-wheel drive is good at traction because all of the weight is in the front and pressing down on the front tires. But rear-wheel drive is better at corners because the weight is more distributed and the pushing wheels aren't also the turning wheels. Four-wheel drive is the best at traction because all of the wheels can push the car, and so you can keep going even if 3 of them are slipping. Then there's all-wheel drive, which is a little different from four-wheel drive. It spends most of its time sending drive power to 2 wheels, but if it senses the wheels slipping, it'll send engine power to the other 2 automatically. Today's four-wheel drive systems can do the same thing, so the difference these days is that a four-wheel drive system also lets you manually select the drive wheels. Four-wheel drive is also called a 4x4 drivetrain, mostly on trucks. Transmissions. A car comes with gears, with low gears letting you drive slow and high gears letting you drive fast. However, you have to be moving fast for a high gear to work, so you have to go up the numbers in order to reach a high speed. With a manual transmission, you change gears by hand, but an automatic transmission will shift gears for you. However, many sports cars with automatic transmissions have paddle shifters set behind the steering wheel. These shifters let you change gears with a tap of your finger. Then there's the continuously variable transmission, also called a CVT. CVTs use special cones instead of gears, so they're more efficient than a normal automatic, but the first generation models made an annoying droning noise that drivers hated. So modern CVTs will have simulated gears, so they have the same audio profile as a normal automatic. Now, about car measurements. The term horsepower was created by James Watt to compare his steam engines to horse-drawn pumps, and it measures the same kind of energy as a watt. For instance, a 60-watt light bulb is also an 8% of 1 horsepower light bulb. Most Americans, at least, measure engines in terms of horsepower, but you can also measure their torque in foot-pounds. Torque is a different kind of energy called work, the same kind you can measure in terms of calories. The best way I can put it is, engine torque is like strength and decides how much you can lift and how fast you can accelerate, whereas horsepower is more like your top speed. RPM stands for rotations per minute, and it counts how often the engine goes through a full cycle each minute. Most cars give you a few thousand even when they're idle, but if they go too fast, they'll shake themselves apart. That's why tachometers that measure RPM have red lines, points that the engine should never go beyond. Miles per hour, you probably know what that is, and if you don't, just remember that 100 kilometers per hour is roughly the same as 60 miles per hour. MPG is miles per gallon, or about how many miles a car can drive when using 1 gallon of fuel. Heavy cars, cars with extra cylinders, and cars built for performance use more fuel than light cars with small and efficient engines. Also, driving down the highway at a steady speed uses less fuel than driving through city traffic and constantly starting and stopping, so you always see 2 numbers when you're looking up gas mileage. The 0 to 60 and quarter-mile times both measure how fast a car can accelerate, so smaller numbers are better. Lateral Gs measure how much a car rolls to the side on a corner, so that's also better when it's lower. There's a whole lot more I could say, but I think that'll do for now. So thanks for joining me again for today's movie and car discussion, and I hope I'll see you next time for a classic post-apocalyptic movie featuring a humongous man in a steel hockey mask.